What's fascinating about that is if the angels can take on these forms, if they have these, and if the way that Lucifer exists is he decided to rival God and was cast out of hell, and it says a third of the angels fell with him, then what do they look like? What forms can they take on? They're no longer connected to the divinity of God. They no longer have unlimited dominion as described by the prophets, but they do have some power. Like I said, Pharaoh's sorcerers could perform miracles, and they got those abilities from somewhere. So what does this bastardized, broken piece of divinity look like when it wants to put power over people? Could sometimes they appear as people? Yeah. Could sometimes they appear as something a little less or a little different than people? Yeah. And in my mind, that's...
Well, they were jealous of they were jealous of us, like
yes,
mortality as a whole. And were they jealous of our look?
Was it demons, or was it like was it Satan himself was jealous of humanity?
Well, to finish that thought real quick, I like maybe a lot of these stories we have, like I said, the monster in the closet, maybe a lot of that comes from them, what they used to look like, what they used to behave. Now the thing around like the jealousy of the devil and stuff like that, a lot of that isn't expressly biblical. A lot of that comes from scholars' beliefs that came afterwards. The Catholic Church has its own like iconography and lore based around like the early saints and the early popes and stuff like that, but I'm not Catholic and I don't really subscribe to a lot of their beliefs. Sure, some of the stuff they said I think was wise, but on a whole, I've got a lot of issues with it, which, duh. But a lot of our modern characterization of Lucifer comes from a lot of paganism that a lot of the time wasn't like expressly satanic, but in our hindsight we've kind of ascribed it to be. Figures like Baphomet, for example, aren't expressly religious or satanic, but because it's like the image of the goat's head or whatnot and sacrifice, people like tie the two together in their memory.
Lucifer, how many times was Lucifer mentioned in the Bible? His name, how many times?
I think it's just once. Yeah. Lucifer the morning. It's describing him as Lucifer the morning star. Yeah. Because he was described as the most beautiful in all of heaven. Yeah.
Most people don't even know that. It is one time Lucifer's name was
cited. Yeah, actually,
isn't Baphomet like barely biblical? Like, is that, like...
Actually not biblical. So if I recall, there's
humans are weird. We're like, have you ever heard of fucking demon goat Satan?
Yeah. Now that being said, there is a lot of demons mentioned by name in the Bible. There's like, well, again, I'm kind of ascribing the belief a lot of these lesser gods or false gods were demons in effect. So with that in mind, there's Baal, there's Dagon, there's Moloch, stuff like that, which there's debate around if Moloch actually was real or not, but that's a whole nother topic. With a lot of these stories around like demonology and whatnot, a lot of it's subscribed by stuff that came after. So like people ascribed a lot of paganism to demonology. Like one of the reasons Lucifer specifically is depicted as like I guess I shouldn't say Lucifer, the devil is depicted as he is because of a lot of stories around paganism and whatnot. So like as the devil is described in the Bible, which for one, by the way, he's never called the devil in the Bible, and the word demon is never used in the Bible. Demon's a Greek word, it came afterwards. It describes the fallen angels, which is what they're called. The word demons came later, it comes off the word demos or all that. And Lucifer is described as Satan, which means the opponent. He's described as Lucifer, he's described as the accursed one, stuff like that. But he's never, like, the word for demons is devils or spirits or stuff like that, stuff along those lines. So the reason that now we see the devil as like the figure with like goat hooves and horns and all that stuff, it comes from a lot of paganism. Like there was a lot of early church beliefs, specifically Catholic like beliefs within the church, when they saw pagans worshiping like figures of Baphomet or making idols to him, they ascribed it to demonology, and kind of the two kind of started to twist together or meld together.
That a lot. And that's not even for the bad stuff, it is for the positive stuff, the Yule log, anything like that. Like the burning, Christmas, things like that. It was from paganism, and they adopted those for a more natural progression for, hey, we are adopting Christianity, we are adopting Catholicism. Hey, how do we do that? This is the easiest way. Using what they're already known, or what these people or these little areas are known for. We're going to adapt that into our own ideologies and then let that flourish. There's a lot of combination, melding, stuff like that. It wasn't always like expressly evil. As a matter of fact, most of it wasn't even intentional. It was just like the figureheads that were seen. And like I explained earlier, with a lot of the Old Testament imagery being of if these false gods could be considered demons, which considering a lot of them involve child sacrifice, I'm kind of cool with saying yeah, probably.
So, like, you have these false gods.
It was widely regarded as a bad move.
Like, you have all these false gods that can perform miracles and demand like blood sacrifices, so people assume those to be demons. Those took on the form of animal. Dagon was a sort of fish. Baal was a sort of ox. So, in a way, it's almost kind of serendipitous that the eventual symbol of the devil was that of like the goat's head with the horns and stuff like that. It's kind of like history correcting itself down the line years later.
I have a spiritual daughter that has been pursued for years by a man who claims to be a practitioner of voodoo and who wanted to take her life, because after he'd abused her as a young child, he didn't think that she would ever be able to speak. And so when she realized that her little sister was also undergoing the same abuses, then she spoke up and went to the authorities. And the guy, because he was able to grab the authorities, he was able to be released in 2 days. And they lost the kit the test, the results for the test that they did at the hospital for the little girl.
Yeah.
And so for like 5 years, he had been searching for that older sister that I've had to move from safe house to safe house, 20 different safe houses, to stay one step ahead of him. And he confesses to the different things that he's done, the different killings that he's done in order to find this girl, and the different groups that he's called upon through the mediation of voodoo in his testimony to try to get to this girl. And he has done many evil things to her, things that are inexplicable, naturally speaking, such as, we had her hidden in a particular house, and this house is locked from the inside, and the owner sleeps with the key in his pocket, and she's sleeping inside. But in the middle of the night, at like 2 or 3 a.m. or something, the gate is knocked on, not the door, but the gate outside, and there are people that brought back the girl. And they had to unlock the padlock with the key in his pocket, the owner of the house, to go outside to get the girl that was inside, who got out without the door being unlocked, without the padlock being opened. And now this happened, it was very mysterious. And this happened in a location that was very far from this man, in a location that he did not know, that was not revealed. Somehow, he says it, this is again his own testimony, I've used my powers, my connections in the voodoo world to be able to locate her. We were able to get her, but every time we get to her, you always mess it up with your stupid prayers. We knew that you'd be trouble for us the moment you took her under your wings. And so, because I keep reminding them that Jesus is Lord, and as Lord, he has purchased with his blood everyone who decides to receive him in faith and in baptism. And this girl has received Jesus in faith and wants to follow Jesus and nothing else. And so, not only with this girl are we fighting the spirits that want her to serve them in voodoo, we have to say no, she's purchased, she will serve Jesus and Jesus only, but also we're fighting this other negative force that is trying to harness all the different powers around the country to get to her. And they always seem to get to her, to find her, to the point where one day she was literally in the middle of the day sleeping in the upstairs of a house. Her door is locked. Her husband went out to pick up a phone, and there's people downstairs. She sees 2 men walk into the room. They didn't open the door. 2 men that just walked into the room, starting searching for a document. They were searching for her passport. And when she's like, "What the heck are you guys doing?" They grabbed her, threw her, took her for clothes, threw her to the ground, tied her hands behind her back, and tied her legs behind her back. And proceeded to do some other things, unfortunately. And they kept looking for the documents, and they found her passport. They also found her test results from a medical exam that she did, because we were trying to use that to see if she could get some kind of medical approval to get out of the country, because this girl was literally being hunted down.
I interviewed this atheist college professor, tenured college professor, who was he was an art professor who was doing a tour with students in Europe, in France, and his lower duodenum ruptured. You usually have like 5 to 6 hours before you're dead, because you're spilling all that junk into your cavity. And it was a weekend, so they couldn't find a surgeon in France. And after 8 hours, he died. Now, he thought when you die, it's just unplug the computer, screen goes blank, there's nothing. And that's not what happened. And instead, he said he was standing there by his bed. He felt the worst he had ever felt in his life, and suddenly he feels wonderful. And he doesn't even know he's dead. Like, he doesn't realize he's dead because he's sitting there thinking, something happened. I feel wonderful. And he feels these new senses. This group of people then come into the hallway, and he can see them in the hallway, and they're calling to him, Howard, come with us. And he said, I'm sick, I need a surgeon. You know, that's what he's been waiting for. And they said, oh, we know all about you. Come with us. Don't you want us to help you? We're gonna help you. Come on, we've been waiting a long time. Come with us. Okay, so time out. I like to point out that not every near-death experience is as deep as others, like meaning all the elements. So some just, there's an out-of-body experience and they're back in.
Okay.
Those can be interpreted in a million ways, right? A million worldviews can wrap around that. If Howard had at this point come back to his body and been resuscitated, his interpretation probably would have been, hey, it's all good. Atheists go to heaven, it feels great. It's nice people, everything's good. But that's not what happened. So he starts to follow these people, and again, time and even distance, it doesn't work the same on the other side, which I don't fully understand that, except that by analogy, you know, think about, you know, from here to Austin, Texas, where I live, Nashville to Austin, it's a long way, right? It's a 2-hour flight. But what if I could think it and be there? How far is it now?
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, distance doesn't mean the same thing. So on the other side, so he couldn't tell, and he follows these people, and he starts to realize they're deceiving him. They're starting to mock him. They're cursing him. They're all these, you know, and he starts to realize this is not good. And then he realizes he's in this darkness, and it keeps getting darker, and he tries to say, hey, I want to go back. And they're like, you're not going anywhere. And they start pushing and shoving, and he's he calls it a darkness that's darker than black. And I've heard people commonly say that. Jesus called it the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, meaning like just, it's, you know, I don't know, I guess just horrific. And that's what he experienced. And so he finally realizes he's being deceived by these creatures that he couldn't fully see completely, because they were kind of veiled. But now it's dark and he can't see them, but he can feel them, and they start to maul him. He starts to try to fight to get away, and they're having fun. So I've had him talk to me about this 4 times, and he starts to describe it. And then he says to me, I can't go any farther.